Introduction. What if you've been looking in the wrong direction? You ever feel like you're chasing something but you can't quite name it? It's strange. You wake up, do what you're supposed to do, work, eat, talk, scroll, sleep, and somehow a quiet ache still lingers in the background. It's not loud, it's not even painful, just persistent, like the sound of a dripping faucet behind the walls of your mind. That ache, it's not just yours, it's almost universal. And here's the thing, most of us are looking outward to fix it. We assume there's something we haven't found yet. A person, a job, a new version of ourselves. We chase goals with names like peace and freedom, but they're slippery, aren't they? Always just a little further out. You know what's wild? Buddhism begins with the idea that something is off, that life isn't quite right as we live it. But instead of fixing the outer world, it asks, what if the suffering isn't in the world, but in how we're holding it? This isn't about dogma or religion. It's not about robes or rituals. It's about clarity, truth, the kind of truth that doesn't shout but whispers, the kind you don't learn, you remember. So what you'll read here, these 6 truths, they're not teachings in the traditional sense. They're stories, moments, mirrors, things you may have felt but never put into words. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find yourself not learning something new but quietly recognizing something very old. Ready? Let's begin. 1. Life is suffering. But that's not a punishment, the parable of the broken bowl. There was once a farmer whose life was marked by sorrow. His land was dry, his harvests small, and worst of all, his son had passed away young. The villagers avoided him, not out of cruelty, but because his grief was heavy, like rain clouds that never burst. One day he traveled far into the hills to find an old monk rumored to have wisdom deep as the earth. He carried with him an offering, a beautiful porcelain bowl passed down from his ancestors. As he walked the winding mountain paths, he stumbled. The bowl fell, cracked into 3 jagged pieces. By the time he reached the temple, he was holding it like a broken heart. "I've lost everything," he said, showing the bowl. "Even the one gift I had to give is now ruined." The monk looked at the broken bowl. Then he looked at the man. "You think you brought a bowl," he said, "but what you brought me was the truth." The farmer blinked. "What truth?" The monk leaned in gently. "That everything breaks, everything changes, and that's not your fault. Suffering is the first truth, but we misunderstand it. In Buddhism, the first noble truth is dukkha, often translated as suffering. But suffering here doesn't mean just pain. It means unsatisfactoriness, a sense that even good things aren't quite enough. Even joy feels fragile. You buy a new phone, it's beautiful, fast, sleek, and then the novelty fades. A crack appears, a new model comes out. You find yourself chasing again. Or worse, something truly meaningful breaks. A relationship, a parent's health, your sense of purpose. Life whispers, this isn't how it's supposed to be. But Buddhism flips the script. It says, what if this is exactly how it's supposed to be? Not to make you miserable, but to wake you up. Modern life, the illusion of constant comfort. Here's the trap. We've built a culture that tries to deny suffering at every turn. We have a headache, pop a pill. Feeling lonely, open an app. Stressed, shop, scroll, escape. But these are distractions, not cures. Band-aids on broken bones. And the worst part, when life does get hard, as it inevitably does, we think we've failed. We believe suffering is a mistake, or worse, a punishment. But what if it's neither? What if suffering is just a sign that you're awake? The farmer's realization. Back in the temple, the monk poured tea into the broken bowl, letting it leak through the cracks. Then he smiled and said, "This bowl is like your heart. It's been cracked, but now it can pour." The farmer didn't say anything. But tears welled up, not from pain, but release. For the first time he understood. He wasn't broken, he was human. The truth you might have missed suffering isn't the enemy. It's the bell that wakes you up. It's the tension that shows you where you're gripping too tightly. It's the echo of love that once filled a space. Buddhism doesn't ask you to eliminate suffering. It simply teaches you to see it clearly and stop turning it into something bigger. Pain is inevitable, but suffering, the resistance, this shouldn't be happening, that part is optional. You're not being punished. You're being invited, and that changes everything. 2. You are not your thoughts, the visitor at the temple gate. There's a story about a young man who climbed a long road to a monastery perched on a cliffside. When he arrived, he was told, "You may enter, but only if you leave your thoughts at the gate." He paused, sat down, waited, tried to clear his mind, but the thoughts wouldn't stop. "I'm not good enough. I'll never be calm. This is stupid. I want to be anywhere else." Finally, he gave up, but as he turned to leave, the old gatekeeper smiled and said, "Now you're ready." The young man looked confused. "But I still have all these thoughts." The gatekeeper replied, "Yes, but now you see that they are not you." The mind is loud, but it's not always honest. Here's something we often forget. Your mind is like a radio that never turns off, and it doesn't always play good music. Sometimes it replays old heartbreaks like sad songs on loop. Sometimes it narrates your day with judgment, fear, or insecurity. But here's the key. You are the one hearing the thoughts, not the thoughts themselves. Let that sink in for a moment. Anatta. The self is not solid. Buddhism teaches anatta, or no self. It's a tricky idea, not that you don't exist, but that the self you think you are is more like a story than a solid object. Today you might feel confident, tomorrow anxious. You didn't disappear, your mood did. So if the self changes, what exactly are you? Your awareness, the space behind the noise. You're not the radio, you're the room the radio's playing in. Let me ask you this. Have you ever believed something about yourself, and then later realized it wasn't true? I'm not creative. I'll never get over them. I'm not good with people. I always mess things up. But years go by, and suddenly you're doing the thing you said you couldn't. So, were you lying to yourself back then? Or now? Neither. Your thoughts were just temporary weather, and weather changes. A simple practice to separate thought from truth. Next time a thought arises, "I'm not enough. This is hopeless. They don't care." Try this. Add 3 words to the end. I'm having the thought that, so, I'm a failure becomes, I'm having the thought that I'm a failure. Nothing ever works out becomes, I'm having the thought that nothing ever works out. Feels different, right? It gives you space, perspective. You're stepping outside the story and seeing it for what it is. Just a thought, not the truth, not your identity. Just a passing cloud. The truth that softens. Everything you don't have to fix your thoughts. You just have to stop becoming them. The gate to peace isn't behind perfect thinking. It's behind noticing. You don't need a quiet mind. You need a quiet watcher. 3. Clinging is the root of all misery. The man who carried the boat. They say there once was a man who traveled to a great river. He had heard that on the other side of the water peace awaited, a monastery tucked into the hills, where the silence was so thick even your regrets softened. The man found a small wooden boat and rowed himself across. The crossing was hard. Strong currents, wind, even a rain that came out of nowhere. But he made it. Wet, tired, relieved. And then he picked up the boat and began to carry it. Not drag it, carry it. On his back, people passing by stared. "Why are you carrying that thing?" they asked. He grunted, "It helped me once, What if I need it again? So he carried it, up the hills, through forests, across dry plains. He wouldn't let go. Eventually, the weight broke his back. The truth, hidden in that story. It sounds absurd, doesn't it? Who would carry a boat after crossing the river? But the truth is, we all do it. Every single day, we carry old pain, old identities, old stories about ourselves that no longer serve a purpose except to make us suffer. We carry relationships that ended years ago, not the people, but the emotional debris. We carry guilt for choices we made when we didn't know better. We carry the image of who we thought we were supposed to become, and beat ourselves up every day for not being that person. And we don't even realize we're doing it. Because here's the kicker. Most of what we carry was once useful. That defense mechanism helped you survive childhood. That hyper-independence got you through heartbreak. That overthinking once protected you from making a painful mistake again, but the river's already behind you. You're still carrying the boat. Craving, clinging, and the Buddhist truth of letting go. The Buddha taught that the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, is tanha, or craving. But craving isn't just wanting more. It's wanting permanence in a world that refuses to stop changing. It's trying to hold the wind. It's saying, this moment isn't enough. I need it to be something else. And when we get what we want, we cling to it. Upadana, grasping like a closed fist around a melting snowflake. Here's a painful paradox. The more tightly you hold something, the faster it slips away. Try holding water in a clenched fist, then try it with an open hand. One leaks, one holds. The same is true with people, goals, even happiness. Let's talk real life, the gripping we don't notice. Ever stayed in a relationship that was long over because letting go felt scarier than being lonely? Ever held on to a version of yourself that you outgrew because the new you felt too uncertain? Ever replayed an old argument in your head again and again, trying to win it retroactively? That's clinging, and it hurts, but it feels familiar, and sometimes familiarity masquerades as safety. The emotional trick. Clinging feels like control. You might think, if I let go, I'll fall apart. I need to hold on. I need to remember. I need to keep this anger alive because it reminds me of what happened. But let me ask you this. What if you're not keeping it alive? What if it's keeping you stuck? Here's the twist. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The boat served its purpose. Now it's just heavy. A small but powerful practice. Try this sometime. Sit with a memory or story that feels heavy, something you've been carrying. Now ask yourself, what did this once give me? Is it still helping me now? What would I gain if I set this down? Then, and this part matters, say softly, thank you. Not sarcastically, genuinely. Thank you for helping me cross the river. And visualize yourself gently placing the boat down on the shore. You don't need to push it away. You don't need to destroy it. You just stop carrying it. Grief and love. The boats we never fully drop. Let's be honest. Some things can't be set down completely. The memory of someone you lost. The ache of a dream that never came true. The longing for a childhood you never got to live. These aren't boats you abandon. They're boats you honor. You can visit them, sit beside them, but you don't have to drag them up the mountain of your future. The whispering wisdom of Buddhism. In the Dhammapada, there's a line. Let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the present and cross to the farther shore of existence. That's not about nihilism, it's about freedom. The kind of freedom that doesn't come from having more, but needing less. The kind of lightness you feel not when the world changes, but when you stop resisting it. You're allowed to stop carrying it. Here's the permission you might need today. You are allowed to let go. You are allowed to release the old narrative. You are allowed to be someone new. someone lighter. You don't owe your suffering a lifetime. The boat helped you once. Now it's time to walk free. Everything changes. That's the good news. The tea leaves never lie. In a quiet corner of a mountain village, there lived an old woman who read fortunes in tea leaves. She wasn't flashy, no crystal ball, no dramatic predictions, just a clay pot, boiling water, and old hands that moved like poetry. People came from far away to sit at her table, not because they believed she could tell the future, but because when she spoke, it felt like she could see into the soul of time itself. One morning, a young woman arrived, frantic and restless. Her boyfriend had left. Her job was on the edge. Her mother's health was failing. Everything felt like it was breaking at once. She sipped her tea, trembling. The old woman looked into the cup, then said, "Everything is changing. That's what the tea leaves say." The young woman scoffed. "I know that already. I need hope. I need to know it gets better." The old woman smiled kindly. "Dear child, the fact that everything is changing is your hope. The one thing that's always true. Nothing stays the same. Buddhism calls it anicca, impermanence. Nothing stays. Not the pain, not the joy, not even you as you are now." At first, that sounds terrifying. We want to hold on to what we love. We want to freeze the good days, protect the people, preserve the moments like flowers between pages. But think about it. The job you hated, it ended. The heartbreak you thought would kill you, you survived it. The shame you carried in your 20s, it softened. Everything you thought was permanent wasn't, and that includes what you're facing now. But why do we still fight it? Because we confuse impermanence with loss. We think if it doesn't last, it's not real. But the truth is, it's real because it doesn't last. The cherry blossoms fall, the candle flickers out. The child outgrows your arms. That doesn't make them less beautiful. It makes them sacred. Let me tell you something oddly comforting. You know those moments when life knocks the wind out of you? When everything feels upside down, uncertain, and just too much? Those are the moments impermanence holds you like a soft whisper. This too will pass. It always does. The fear, it fades. The confusion, it clears. The unbearable becomes bearable. And yes, the joy also fades. But that's why we're supposed to notice it while it's here. Not hoard it, not overthink it. Just hold it like a sunbeam. Modern life is an argument against impermanence. Let's be real. Most of us spend our lives trying to pause the good and rush the bad. We take selfies to capture happiness, then feel empty when it doesn't match reality. We panic when things end, even though they always were going to. We think forever is a goal, but in nature there is no forever, just seasons. Spring blooms, summer thrives, autumn fades, winter rests, and none of them fight each other. They know change is not a failure, it's the rhythm of life. A small practice, the impermanence lens. When you're going through something hard, try this. Pause, take a breath, then whisper softly. Even this is changing. It's not denial. It's not fake positivity. It's truth. The sadness, it's moving. The anxiety, it's temporary. The confusion, it has an end. Say it when you're overwhelmed. Say it when you're stuck in traffic. Say it when your heart feels cracked open. And say it when you're happy too, so you don't sleepwalk through the good parts. The wisdom of the tea leaves. Back in that mountain village, the young woman looked down at her empty teacup. The old woman pointed to a tiny swirl of leaves at the bottom and said, "This little pattern here, it means something will end soon, but it also means something new is arriving." The young woman sighed. "But why does everything have to keep changing?" The old woman chuckled, her eyes warm. "If it didn't, dear child, the pain you feel now would stay forever. Would you really want that?" She didn't answer, but the next time her heart ached, she remembered that line, and she breathed a little easier. What impermanence asks of us, Buddhism doesn't ask us to stop loving things. It asks us to love them more deeply, because we know they're not ours to keep. It invites us to show up fully, to say, I love you when it matters, to take the walk before the sunset fades, to forgive before the silence becomes permanent, to say yes to life, even as it changes shape. Because the shape is always changing, but the presence, the awareness behind it, is eternal. So here's the truth, friend. Everything is changing. That's scary, but it's also what sets you free. The old you, gone, the storm, passing, the sadness, moving through, and somewhere, just out of view, the tea leaves are already rearranging, quietly spelling out the next chapter. 5. True peace is in stillness, not control. The master who slept during the storm. A violent storm once rolled over a coastal village. It came with little warning, one of those sudden, sweeping tempests that turns daylight to dusk and bends trees like they're made of string. Fishermen rushed to secure their boats. Mothers called their children home. Doors slammed, windows rattled, candles flickered as thunder cracked like a whip across the sky. But high on a hill, in a small temple made of weathered wood, a young novice ran into the sleeping quarters of his master, breathless and wide-eyed. Master, wake up! The storm! It's dangerous! We should prepare! Lock the doors, light the lanterns, check the roof. But the old monk, calm, serene, rolled over beneath his blanket and replied, Everything that needs to be done has already been done. You may join me in rest. And just like that, he fell back asleep. Peace is not the absence of chaos. You know what most of us are doing? Trying to organize the storm. We think, if I can just control everything, my emotions, their behavior, the future, then I'll finally be at peace. But peace doesn't come from control. It comes from no longer needing control. The master wasn't at peace because there was no storm. He was at peace because he had done what he could, and then he let go. Most of us, though, are stuck in the doing part, always checking, always fixing, always preparing for a moment that hasn't happened yet. But here's the quiet, radical truth. Peace is an internal posture, not an external condition. You don't need the world to be calm. You just need to stop fighting every wave. Let's talk about modern control freakery. No judgment, we all do it. You plan every detail of a vacation so it doesn't get ruined, and then you miss the vacation because you're too busy managing it. You try to read your partner's tone in every text, analyzing every emoji like it's a riddle from the gods. You refresh your inbox like peace is hiding in an unread email. You spend hours rehearsing conversations that will never happen, preparing defenses for attacks that never come. We call it productivity, but what it really is, anxiety wearing a suit. Stillness isn't laziness, it's mastery. Stillness doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean pretending you don't care. It means I've done what I can. Now I choose not to spin. It's like this. Imagine your thoughts are a glass of muddy water. If you keep stirring it, it never clears. But if you set it down, slowly the sediment settles. Clarity emerges. That's stillness. That's what the monk had. And it's not exclusive to monks. You can have it too, even in traffic, even in heartbreak, even in the middle of a storm that isn't over yet. Control is addictive, but it's a lie. Let's be blunt. You're not in control of much. Not the weather, not other people's opinions, not the stock market, not your past, not your aging body, not even your own thoughts. Half the time, they show up uninvited and rude. The idea that you can control everything? It's comforting, but false. And the more tightly you cling to that illusion, the more exhausted you'll feel. The Buddhists have a word for this. Grasping. It's the emotional version of trying to carry a river in your hands. And yet, when you let go of control, even just a little, something miraculous happens. You float. A practice for when life feels like a storm. Try this next time your world feels too loud. 1. Sit down, somewhere quiet, if possible. 2. Put one hand on your chest, one on your belly. 3. Close your eyes and say silently, there is a storm, but I don't have to be the storm. Then breathe, slowly. Let the storm pass through you, not into you. Stillness isn't what happens around you, it's what happens inside you. A note on responsibility, because stillness isn't passivity. You might be thinking, but I can't just sit around and do nothing. I have bills, kids, people depending on me. Of course, stillness isn't about abandoning your life. It's about showing up without flailing. You do what you can with clarity. You make the phone call. You apologize. You clean the kitchen. You set the boundary. But you don't spiral. You don't stew. You don't replay the same fear 300 times until it becomes a personality. That's not stillness. That's mental static. Stillness says, I act, then I release. I speak, then I listen. I move, then I rest. This is the dance. This is the balance. Back at the temple. The next morning, the storm had passed. The novice, bleary-eyed and anxious, opened the temple doors. Trees were bent, leaves scattered, but nothing was broken. The monk rose, stretched slowly, then made tea. The boy asked, weren't you scared? The monk smiled. Fear visited, but I didn't feed it. The wind howled, but I didn't open the door. That's what stillness does. It doesn't deny fear. It just doesn't host it. What this truth offers you. In a noisy world, stillness is rebellion. In a chaotic life, stillness is sanctuary. You don't have to control the storm. You just have to remember you are not the storm. You are the sky it passes through. And the sky, my friend, it never breaks. 6. Compassion is the only real strength. The thief who returned. There was a monk once, an old man with a crooked back and a gentle voice, who lived alone in a small hut at the edge of a forest. He owned very little, a straw mat to sleep on, a clay bowl to eat from, a single candle, a robe worn thin from the years, and still, one night, a thief crept into his hut. The monk woke with a start and saw the figure in the moonlight, trembling, eyes darting, but instead of fear, the monk smiled. He sat up slowly, rubbed his eyes, and said, "You've come a long way for nothing, I'm afraid. I have no money, no food, nothing worth stealing." The thief stood frozen, confused. The monk continued, "But it's cold tonight. Would you like my robe?" He stood, removed it, and handed it to the man. The thief, stunned, speechless, took it and fled into the trees. The monk, now shivering, sat on the floor and gazed at the moon. "Poor man," he whispered. "I wish I could have given him this moon, too." Wait, what just happened? It seems absurd, doesn't it? The man gives something to the person robbing him. He doesn't fight, doesn't yell, doesn't even call it injustice. He meets violence with gentleness, greed with generosity, because what the monk saw wasn't a threat. It was suffering in the shape of a man. What compassion really is, hint, it's not pity. Compassion isn't feeling sorry for someone. It's not sympathy. It's not even kindness, really. Compassion is the clear seeing of suffering without judgment and the desire to ease it. It's saying, I see your pain, and I choose not to add to it. That might look like a hug. Sometimes it's a boundary. Sometimes it's silence. Sometimes it's walking away without hatred. It doesn't mean becoming a doormat. It means becoming unshakable, not through force, but through love. The strength hidden in gentleness. You know what's easy? Reacting, snapping, taking things personally, holding grudges, closing your heart. That's easy. What's hard? Keeping your heart open in a world that tries to close it. What's hard? Looking at someone who hurt you and seeing their wounded child beneath the adult mask. What's hard? Choosing grace when ego wants revenge. That's strength. And Buddhism? It doesn't admire power, it admires gentleness, because true compassion, it's radical. Real-life compassion is messy, and that's okay. Let's be honest. You won't always get it right. None of us do. You'll judge people, get annoyed, snap at your kids, say things you regret. And when you do, the first person who needs your compassion is you. Forgive yourself. Begin again. Every breath is a new start. Compassion isn't just for others. It's also the way you hold your own imperfections. The Dalai Lama once said, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." But he didn't mean it's always easy, just always possible. A practice, the pause that changes everything. Next time you're in conflict, pause, not forever, just for one breath. In that space, ask yourself, what's really happening here? What's the hurt behind the words? Can I respond from love even just 10% more than usual? Even the smallest shift matters. It's like turning the wheel of a boat by a few degrees. You won't notice it at first, but days later you're on a completely different course. That's compassion, quiet, directional, transformative. The thief returned months. Later, the monk was meditating outside his hut. A familiar figure appeared from the trees. The thief. He looked different now. His eyes were softer. He held something in his hands. A small bowl of rice, some fruit, a blanket. He placed it at the monk's feet. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't understand before." The monk opened his eyes and smiled. "No need," he said. "You came back. That's enough." The two of them sat in silence. No speeches, no shame, just presence. And for the first time in a long while, the thief felt peace. So here's the truth. Compassion doesn't always fix things, but it changes everything, not because it changes them, but because it changes you. It softens the sharp places, opens doors that anger slams shut, turns pain into wisdom, turns fear into understanding. And when we meet the world from that place, even thieves come home. Conclusion: the truth was never hidden. Let's pause right here. You've walked through 6 truths, not as concepts to memorize, but as reflections of what you already know deep down. And if you're still here, still reading, then you've likely felt these truths before. Maybe without names, maybe without language, but somewhere in your body they've lived. Because these aren't just Buddhist teachings, they're human truths. They don't belong to monks or temples or books. They belong to you. Here's what you might be realizing now. 1. Life is hard sometimes, but it's not punishing you. 2. Your thoughts aren't always right, and they don't define you. 3. You can let go of what you're clinging to, even the good things. 4. Everything changes, and that's your freedom, not your curse. 5. Stillness is possible, even when nothing around you is calm. 6. Compassion is your strength, not your weakness. Simple, right? But not easy, which is why we return to them over and over, like mantras, like breath. Let me leave you with this. You're not broken. You don't need to be more enlightened, more productive, more perfect. You're already walking the path, even if it's slow, even if you wander, even if some days you feel like you're going backward. The moon is still full, even when covered by clouds. And every moment you remember even one of these truths, you are living with wisdom. Real peace was never somewhere else. It was always in you, waiting, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, just kind, just still.